Okay, so I'll get started. Probably some more people will come in and so this is what I call the real skills workshop. And what I wanted to do was, based on last year and some of my experiences, it was like, okay, so we went into making games professionally from being a hobbyist, and there were a lot of misconceptions that we had. And maybe you have those as well, so I want to correct them for you so you don't have to take the path we took in order to get there. And so the format is I'm going to do a shameless plug, first of all, and tell you about some of the stuff that we've worked on. And then after that, I'll go into what those misconceptions are, and then we'll go into organized time of Q&A with specific topics. And so it'll be roughly about 15 minutes per topic. I mean, if anyone has any questions, it's fine. We can move on to the next thing.
Let's go ahead and get rolling in 3 minutes. Give people time to settle down.
Oh, Tim, we already announced we'll start again.
Oh, okay. I'll tell them you guys are starting.
Just talk really slow.
Oh, did you announce the group picture?
I did not. So that was at the end.
Another one.
It's for anybody who missed yesterday's, we're going to have a group picture to pick. Well,
yeah,
a
right.
group picture just for the people who missed yesterday's, so we can Photoshop them in.
Nice.
It's a little different lighting.
Upside down, hanging from the ceiling.
Have everything go like this.
Yeah. Anyway, so there'll be roughly 15 minutes for each topic, and we'll have a different person representing those topics. Is G even here? G's supposed to be here for programming part of it, but anyway, I'm sure by the time we get to it, he'll be here, so that's okay. Okay, so I work for MirthWorks, and MirthWorks is my third company that I started, and we went full on into making games. And so our very first title, we wanted to make something simple, something casual, put something out there, and that game is Catch the Monkey. And that's Alex's awesome artwork for the title screen. Yay, Alex! Coming from his film background and such. And so, really quickly, Catch the Monkey is a game where monkeys are jumping into the farm and they're eating your potato plants, because that just makes sense. And so you want to get rid of those monkeys, get them out of the farm, and protect your potato plants. Now the farmer, he's a really old guy, and he doesn't move so quickly, and so you need, as a player, to distract the monkeys long enough for the farmer to catch them and get them out of the farm. And so you have different tools that you see at the bottom that you accumulate as you play, and you have a whole tool belt, and you can pick which things to bring into the level, and it's all non-violent ways in which to distract the monkeys, make them giggle and stuff. And so we created this game, and I don't think we will ever recoup the money we spent in making this game. I could go to all the business conference things that I want to, and probably never do that. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that was our first title, Catch the Monkey. And Alex kind of talked a little bit about that, where he was saying, oh, I just assumed you needed 24 frames per second of animation. And he was like, no, 6 would have been fine. Those kinds of things. So after we finished that, just on that, we first released it for iPhone. We then released it to the BlackBerry Playbook, which at the time was popular, but now isn't even for sale anymore. And the aspect ratio is different between a phone and a tablet of that particular size. Your Kindle Fire, those kind of things are different aspect ratios. So we actually redo artwork in order to get it to fit and not stretch and look stupid and stuff on those platforms and stuff. And so we spent literally all of last year. The game came out in February, and the whole rest of the year, I made it for BlackBerry Playbook, I made it for Android phone, made it for Android tablet, made it for Kindle Fire, made it for Nook HD. It was nuts dealing with all the different platforms of getting the logging out there. So anyway, that's Catch the Monkey. So then, when I came here last year, I talked to you about Sushi World. And Sushi World is our next title that we prototyped. And the concept behind Sushi World was we wanted to create a puzzle type game, and we used the boggle mechanic in order to have you spell out words. And this is a sushi recipe for making something. So we'll call that an eel roll or something. And so you have to find the eel roll somewhere in here. And it is in here. I have an AI that makes sure that's there. And so you have to find that in there. And then you do that kind of as quickly as you can, and the faster that you can do that, the more points you're going to get and stuff. And so anyway, so we came here, we had a prototype of Sushi World, a bunch of people played it, some people said, this game is fantastic, one of the funnest things I've ever played in a long time, and then we shelved it. I built this in, I guess I could go back to, this was built in C++ and using a tool called Marmalade. Marmalade allows you to take C++ code and deploy to iOS, to PC, to Mac, to BlackBerry, to Android and stuff, all from a PC, because I'm a PC guy, so we do all that from a PC. When I built this prototype, for those who know about programming, C++ is the longest taking language that you could probably use. Very powerful, very good, I enjoy it, but it takes a long time. And so in creating the prototype, I built it in C#, XNA, using Visual Studio, and I really enjoyed that. But the problem became, great, I got this game, all the game logic, the AI, and all this stuff, it's all written in C#. If I'm going to publish that, I need to move it into C++, and that's really not something I'm looking forward to. And so this game is still in development. Then we went and made A is for App. And A is for App is a, I don't know if you can read this much there, it's a Daddy Time storybook, it's also for Mamas too. But I'm a new dad, and as a new dad, I wanted to find things that help me bring my IT world and my gaming world to my baby. Now my baby, at that time we built this, was like 1 month old, so she was too young in order to do that shit. All she could do was chew on the corner of an iPad. But now that she's about 10 months old, we're almost at the point where she can play A is for App. And it holds a 10-month-old attention. And that was something that was really impressive to me, because for anybody who's tried to make things for children that young, that's very hard to hold their attention. Winnie the Pooh does nothing for her. Baby signing time, she'll watch that sucker for 24 minutes straight. So there is techniques for helping, I guess, young children hold their attention. So I'm going to show you a commercial that we made, and this is relevant. This is not just taking advantage of your attention in order to show you a shameless plug for our thing. But let's watch this commercial here first.
Children, a huge blessing and a huge responsibility. What do children start off knowing? Nothing. We have to teach them. But what are we teaching them? We forced 3 interns to read over 1,200 children's books. Do you know what we found? Thousands of useless facts. Like A is for aardvark. When is the last time you saw an aardvark? Are you raising a zoologist? How will this help them live on their own one day? We're Mirthworks. Our team has studied this problem intensively. Children spend much of their time sleeping, disobeying, and making a mess. But you can teach them valuable career skills. But what tools are there to teach technology to children? Introducing A is for App, the interactive technology storybook. You and your child will enjoy quality playtime as they learn D is for database, J is for JPEG, and V is for virtualization. Finally, children can learn what they have always wanted to know. A is for App. Teach children what matters.
Shameless plug. Please spread this video on the internet. Just Facebook it and viral it. We have not yet released A is for Apps. We have not yet released. This is like the limited edition preview of our commercial. The title is with the publisher. I just don't know when we're going to release this. You know, it's a matter of days and whatever and stuff. So I don't know what kind of communication mechanism we have after this conference. If you know, posting it on the Cgdc website or
The Steam community, join us.
the Steam community, if there's a Twitter feed or something. But anyway, if you think this was funny, and it seemed like most of you did, you can help us by just spreading it. Just get it out there. And anyways, we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Where's the link for that?
Where's
On Earthworks.
Well, it's currently on the Mirthworks website. So if you go to mirthworks.com, you can find those graphics.
That's when the publisher did the commercial?
The publisher saw the commercial,
So that's
and
why it
it,
hasn't.
and it had, it was very difficult to describe this project to someone before they saw it. And once they saw the commercial, they're like, yeah, let's go, let's do this. We understand what this thing is now. Because they're like, seriously, virtualization for like a 2-year-old? Like, what is wrong with you guys? Right? So, okay, so that was written in C++ in the game engine that I created, C++ and Marmalade, and will be coming to iPhone and Google. We've given up on Playbook, that thing is done. Anyway, so then Marmalade came out with a new tool, which they call Marmalade Quick, which uses Lua and Cocos 2D and Box 2D and a couple of other things. And so it's like, you know, we should investigate this, see maybe this is a better way. Because one thing that we have been kind of saddled with or burdened by is it just takes forever to make a game. It just, you know, we're working at it full time, it just takes forever. So how can we shorten that production time? And so we started investigating this tool called Marmalade Quick. And started learning Lua and practicing it out. And so it was like, we kind of needed something in order to do that. And so one thing we've noticed from A is for App, people love catching the stars. Something catch the monkey. People love catching the stars. We're like, you know what? We're just going to create a star catching game. Because everybody seems to ignore all the other content that we put there. So we're just going to make a star catching game. And then we didn't think that was funny enough, and people would give that kind of a second look. And so we batted around a lot of ideas. We finally came up with, what would be really funny? What would be something you're like, what? I gotta see this game. And that was to catch presidential heads. So we took presidents of the United States and put that in a game, and you catch the heads of the founders of America and the presidents as you play. So the idea is that as you're catching heads, if you catch a Democrat and you catch another Democrat, that builds up Democratic fever. And so when you have built up your Democratic fever, things go nuts, and we start playing an anthem, and now you get bonus points for every Democratic president you catch within the next kind of 10 seconds. And so the idea is make something kind of like Fruit Ninja, and it has 2D physics, and the heads are bouncing off of each other, and it's just funny watching Bill Clinton winking at you as his head's rolling around on the screen and everything. But maybe you're not a Democrat. Well, we have the Republican fever as well. So you can play this game, Democrat or Republican, however you choose, and it builds up this fever and you catch all these heads. And then at the end of the game, then you see your score, and it's like, you caught this many Obamas, and you caught this many, Jimmy Carters, and tells you, how long they were in office. And so the scoring system is the number of years they were in office. So FDR is 12 points. He's the only guy to have 3 terms. That's amazing. Okay, so this is Heads of State, and this is still in development, and it's not out yet.
What's the -4?
Oh yeah, so we have 2 bomb presidents. One is Nixon on the Republican side, so he wipes out your entire score. And then on the Democrat side, it's Buchanan, and he also wipes out your entire score. And finally, we are working on Magical Castle spelling, grades 2 and 3, and again, I'm trying to shorten that development cycle and get the production to what I would call a reasonable length of time in terms of investment. And so it took us a while, again, investigating Marmalade Quick and everything, and I finally landed with Unity. And Unity in C# is total awesomeness. It is pure awesomeness. And we heard yesterday from Kingsley, and he's like, yeah, C++, that's what I work in on my day job. And when I go home and I work on something on my own, I don't have time for all that garbage. I use Unity with C#. So it really is awesome. And so we just started prototyping of this, and these are the main avatar characters. So the idea is that you have an avatar in this magical castle, and you go around, and there's spelling lessons that you go through, and it's really super awesome. I can talk all day about it. And we have a cast of characters, and this is the Husky Dog, and so there's 6 characters, kind of Mickey Mouse in the Clubhouse of Friends. So we have a cast of characters that you interact with, and hopefully there's people here to help us with voiceover and some of the writing and dialogue and this other stuff. And so this is a very ambitious project. We're working with an educator who has published 35 textbooks on spelling in Ontario, where we're from. She has written grade 1 to 8 spelling textbook, and kids that we know, like, that's their textbook. And so we're working with someone who's very prominent in education and bringing all of her lessons and teaching into the tablet world. Okay, so that's a bit where we're coming from in terms of our experience. So what are the 8 misconceptions that we have? Number 1 is number 1. This is the biggest misconception I had being going from hobbyist to professional game developer. Playing games prepares me to make games. That is totally untrue. It is 100% not true. I can give you a really quick analogy of why this is not true. Watching baseball does not help you play baseball well. Okay? Why is that? Because watching baseball does not help you throw a ball accurately. Watching baseball does not help you run quickly. Watching baseball does not get you in the right place in order to catch it, or to maybe positioning and a few things. So I'm not saying it's useless in that it's, don't waste your time. You can watch baseball and understand positioning, and it's a right-handed batter versus left-handed batter, and we need to shift the infield and everything. But you will not be an awesome baseball player by watching baseball. So I thought I would be an awesome game designer by playing games, and that is not the case. The way you get awesome at making games is making games. That is it. That is the only thing. And Brock last year told us that, and he challenged us and said, release a game in the next year. And he said something that was very valuable. I don't know if you remember it, if you were here. He said, okay, maybe you can't make an awesome game. Make a crappy game. Make a crappy game, because that's the path to the awesome game, right? So make a crappy game and start building those skills. The second thing, my misconception was I wanted to build what the market wants. I saw all the casual games out there, I saw all the Bejeweled and whatever, and I guess now it's Candy Crush and stuff, so I saw what was there, and I'm like, I'm going to make that. I'm going to make something for all the casual people out there. The biggest problem with that, I don't like those games. I don't like those games. I don't play them. And as I've done some experimentation in making other kinds of games in worlds that I do like RPG Town I told you a bit about yesterday, solutions to problems just come naturally when you're working on something you do love. And so when I'm making a casual game or even like a puzzle game, I get stuck. Like, I don't know what to do. I have to go and start asking people and whatever. There is only one thing that you can do with your life on this world. You can make your unique art. No one else can make your art. If other people like that, that's awesome. I can't tell you whether or not someone's going to love your individual expression of game, but what I can tell you is you're the only person who can do that. Don't pretend and try to make someone else's game. Don't look at what Bejeweled is and like, oh, that's really popular, people like that, I'm going to try and make something like that. If you love puzzle games, make a puzzle game. If you don't like puzzle games, don't make a puzzle game. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, the next thing is I thought making games was like making software. I have been in the software industry for 15 years, running software projects, large software projects, millions of dollars worth of software. I have been responsible for designing and project managing and building and programming and everything. It's just not the same as making a game. It isn't. I know all about the unified process and Scrum and Agile processes and all the project management techniques and all this stuff. Yeah, it's not the same. Why is it not the same? Because when you're building business software, it has a specific objective of it needs to do, let's say, 2 + 2, and it does 4, you're done. You can ship. When it comes to making a game, you have in your design document, it does 2 + 2, and it does 4, and you're like, it's perfect, exactly, but it's not fun. It's not fun. It was fun on the whiteboard. We thought it was fun. We imagined it being fun, but it isn't fun. And now you start a whole new development cycle of what I call trying to find the fun. You got to find the fun. And so this blows away your schedule. This could take weeks. We spent on Sushi World days and days on how the bar, the progress bar, should grow and the colors it should be, because it wasn't fun with what we originally designed. And so I cannot stress that enough, that games are art. They are not software. Have a detailed plan. Yeah, don't. Don't. That sounds like totally wrong. PM people will be like, what? Yeah. You need to take your idea, make it as small as possible, and prototype that idea. And you need to work on that prototype and test it and find the fun. Don't build out the whole thing. Don't be doing backstories to the world and designing all the characters and whatever and stuff. And so we are following this now. With Catch the Monkey, we had a huge design document and everything and stuff. And we also had no document. So we've done both. We've had no document, don't do that. And we've had the huge design document, don't do that. You need to have a small amount that everybody on the team is in agreement with. Build that, prototype it, go from there. A game is greater than the sum of its parts. I thought, okay, the tickling mechanism in Catch the Monkey, yeah, it's okay, it's not that fun. But once we add the store with the ability to buy upgrades to the tools, once we add picking your tools, once we add the story and dialogue, then it's going to be fun. Couldn't be more wrong about that. If it's not fun in the small, it won't be fun in the big. Okay? Minecraft is the perfect example of this. It's fun to dig a hole. It just is. I don't know why it is, but it's fun to dig a hole. And everything else is strapping around that. It's fun to place a block in Minecraft. And everything after that is just more of that, and it's fun. And so we needed to learn this, that it has to be fun in the small, and then it will be fun in the large. We had hoped it would be fun in the large, because it wasn't fun in the small. People are going to love it. Once it's ready, people are going to be so excited to play this game that we've been building for 2 years, and we have sweated and thought about it and talked about it and everything. Yeah, the sad reality is, especially in the mobile space, this is less true in Steam space and other things, but in the mobile space, Apple is currently bragging that there's 750,000 apps in their store. Okay? You know what that means? There's 749,999 other choices than you. What do you think your chances are of capturing that person's interest? And they've never heard of you, they don't know you, and frankly, they don't like it. So now, how are you going to sell your game? And that is a huge wake-up call. So we had lists of all the review sites, and we emailed every reviewer out there, and we told them about the awesomeness about our game, and they just could care less. They're like, yeah, so I get 100 emails a day of this. And you have to have something unique, and you have to build your tribe. You have to build people that think what you're doing is awesome. You got to build that one person at a time, and you got to sell to that tribe, to that fan base, and that fan base needs to be the ones going and doing that. And so the whole idea people are going to love it when it's done, yeah, totally not true. I'm almost done. I'm almost done is the biggest misconception we had after the first 6. There are 2 parts to game software development, okay? This is your quick lesson in project management. There is the first 90% of development, and there is the second 90% of development. That is how a game is built. The first 90% and the second 90%. So when you're like, yeah, we're almost done, that means you're starting the second 90%. And it's very brutal and disappointing, and it's an emotional roller coaster, because you think you're almost done, and then you find a bug. You think it's fun, and you do a focus group, and it's not fun, and you have to go back to the drawing board. And basically, it's the second 90% where you start to hate your baby. And you loved it up until this point, you thought it was awesome, and now you hate it. And now you just want it out of the house, you want it gone, you want to move on to the next project, where that project is going to be way more fun than the project I'm currently working on. And it's brutal. So anybody who has not yet shipped a game, I don't think you know what I'm talking about. Shipping a game is the hardest thing I have done in my life. Shipping a game. I've been a salesperson convincing people in a boardroom of skeptics to give me millions of dollars for software. That was easier than shipping a game. I have been up 24 hours fixing a database problem. We lost data and customer or credit card numbers and stuff. That was easier than shipping a game. I have never done anything as hard as shipping a game. Okay? And finally, the 8th one is building the masterpiece. I have this awesome idea, I've been working on this idea for so many years, it's going to be so great, and I'm going to go out and build it. That is the most unrealistic thing that we did, that's the most unrealistic thing that you can do. You need to get your chops in making a game. If this is your first game, do not build the masterpiece. Hold off on the masterpiece. Save that for when you got the chops for it. Your first game needs to be something you can get out there and you can experience the second 90%. And that will then help you in your design process on your masterpiece as to what you can achieve and what you should do. Okay? So those are the things that we learned. And so now we open it up to the Q&A. So any questions that you have in terms of the things that I just said, or game design in general, I am here to help you and answer those questions. Maybe there's people in the audience that know more than I do, and maybe they can help all of us, but this is the time to focus kind of Q&A. Yeah?
Do you have any advice for, say, you're trying to do a game that kind of is purposefully a throwback to older games, like a traditional linear RPG style game, but at the same time you understand you want it to be something fun and interesting instead of it feeling like the person is rehashing something they've done before?
So the question is, how do you do that? Like, how do you do a throwback without it being old, like still fresh?
Yeah.
My answer to that, and I'm opening it up to everybody else, my answer to that is it comes down to mechanic. The mechanic has to be amazing. There's one thing we can learn from German board games. German board games have amazing mechanics, and the context maybe doesn't even fit the mechanic. It seems in German board games, they don't even care what the context is. They get the mechanic and they nail that sucker to its perfection. And then they're like, oh, by the way, you're trying to settle this place called Catan. Right? And so that is the approach. If you're making a throwback RPG, your combat system needs to be amazing. There's a game called Desktop Dungeon. Has anybody played Desktop Dungeon? It's kind of a throwback to Rogue. His mechanic is every time you move on the map, there's this little tiny map, and it's all blank, and you can only see around you. But it's like almost like characters, like characters from the keyboard, like letters represent things, just like Rogue. And every time you move, you heal. So when you have combat against someone and you leave the combat, you only have 30% of your health. There's no health potion. You have to move a certain number of steps. But you can only move where you haven't been before. And so it creates this weird balance between, do I fight something I see, or do I move a few more steps and maybe get caught into an even worse combat that I can see and stuff. And so he's taken a very simple mechanic and made it a phenomenal game. Like it's a Rogue throwback. And just, I found highly enjoyable with people in my office and stuff. Does that answer your question? Does anybody else have an answer for her?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you can play your game and it's fun for you, not because you made it, but because it's the kind of game you would want to buy from somebody else, you know. Other people, you know, played the same games you did growing up and stuff, and they'll enjoy it too. Just make sure you're not in love with it because you're making it.
So that's why play testers are always so important, obviously.
Honest playtesters are important. Dishonest playtesters are useless. I have found in the world very few honest people. Most people are nice and kind and lie to your face.
But if people play test it, don't like
Yes. Have your enemies play test, then you're onto something. Yeah. Questions? Yeah.
Tell me about your prototype process.
Okay. The whole thing?
Well, just break it down. What parts do you prototype? Do you paper prototype first, or do you prototype?
I personally don't do paper prototype because I think that would take me longer than to do an electronic prototype. But if that's not true for you, then you should paper prototype. With Sushi World, we did paper prototype because there was a lot of different ideas that we had and we had to try out, and coding all those ideas would have taken a while. So we paper prototype that. So the first thing is we have a mechanic. We have some kind of mechanic that we think is interesting and fun, and we have usually some context to that, like and boggle. Like, let's try and combine that. Right? So that was the idea that we had. And we've done this for several prototypes. And I got this from The Art of Game Design, a book of lenses. Can't recommend that book, you know, more. Like, that is the book. If you've never read a book about game design, read that book, and everything else is secondary in my mind to that book. So in that book, he talks about taking the game as small a slice as possible and build out that slice. And so, for instance, in the Magical Castle game, it's kind of like Monkey Island, where you have a map that you walk around on and you interact with some objects and some characters and stuff as you go between these spelling lessons. And so we were concerned with, okay, we got all these rooms, we got like this layout of the castle. How long is it going to take to go from one end of the castle to the other end? Like if you got a quest item here and you had to bring it over there, how long does that actually take? Because they're 7 years old. So we need to know what that is. But the second thing is, for Alex, he needs to know how many frames are in that walk cycle. How fast are they moving in pixels per second? How big are the characters in relation to the room? And so we figured out, you know what, we just need a map that you can walk around on and interact with doors, and that's our first prototype. And I have that prototype right now, and I was able to make that pretty quickly in Unity, and we can walk around in the castle and get a feel for it. And that's what you're trying to do, because the document of these are my features and whatever, that's your intent, but that's not your feel for the game. It's the prototype that's going to give you the feel. And then you can go and do your next level of prototype, right? So it's like, okay, so we got the walking around done, now we want to do the hidden objects where you like click on a candlestick and a coin pops out, right? And so we're going to distribute the coins throughout there. Is that actually fun? We think it's fun to search for hidden objects, but is it actually fun? We don't know until we put it in the prototype. And so, in a way, you're prototyping until you release. Anybody else have an answer for Wade? Wade, are you happy with that answer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, next question.
You mentioned 2 games in this weekend, not 2 games, 2 books.
Yep.
What was the one you just mentioned, The Art?
The Art of Game Design by Shell, S-C-H-E-L-L, and the subtitle is Book of Lenses. The Art of Game Design, Book of Lenses. He also has an iPhone app where he has 100 lenses, like principles, that he talks about in his book. He has an iPhone app that has those 100 design principles, and they're like flashcards that you can like flip through and go to for inspiration and stuff, and it's free. So you can check that out on the iOS store. I'm not sure if it's on Android.
Jesse Shell?
Yeah. Jesse Shell.
You had mentioned another book in the other gamification session.
Oh yeah, and a gamification book is called Gamification by Design by O'Reilly, written by Gabe Zickerman or something like that. I think if you search for gamification book, it's like one of the first Google results. So definitely the top Amazon result. Published by O'Reilly, fantastic book, taught me a lot about gamification in a way that I can understand as well. Next question? Game design, experience from the field, things we totally screwed up on.
Is there any releasing anything early, like any reason to do that, or that's what?
Yes, you want to release as often as you possibly can. Because every time you release, it forces you to a certain level of perfection, for whatever it is that you're releasing. Like, it's not the whole game necessarily, but maybe it's level 1. So you're going to get level 1 to perfect. What happens is when it sits inside the development house and you're working on it, you're like, level 1's mostly done. Yeah, there's a few things here and there that we got to finish up, but then you start working on level 2, and you start working on level 3 and stuff. So when you release level 1 and you start getting feedback, and you start finding out like, oh, I didn't even know you could jump there, that kind of stuff, that's invaluable for when you go to do level 2, because you're not going to make those mistakes. You're going to be, watching out for it and stuff. And so, yes, you want to release. And so last year, we were prepping for the Cgdc, and so we were working on our Sushi World prototype. And that last week before we came here was total crunch time. Just getting this sucker to the point where someone who didn't know what this game was, someone who didn't build it, could actually play it. And that is a whole different ball of wax than, building it and you already know what it is, you know what to do and where to go and all that other stuff. So, yes, really soft.
Multimedia versus non-multimedia in game design. Do you see any advantages to
find
getting away from this bang? Some of my games I've been tinkering with is literally going back to 20-year-old technology and doing new things with old like mud engines, etc. and yet everyone now is the norm is sound and graphics and. Do you see any advantages to that in the game design?
So when you mean multimedia, you're talking about like almost like eye candy, ear candy kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
I don't know what you said. Sorry.
Oh, like eye candy, ear candy, like it's really exciting, whiz bang type thing.
Right. Well, there's a lot of games right now that color and graphics and multimedia is everything, and it's not just cool. It's now like the norm. And so I'm just, as a game designer, what would you do? What, you know, if you took away some of those features of your game, how would you compensate in fun without some of the color, the sound, whatever?
Okay, so first I'll argue with you that I don't think your question is actually a game design question.
Okay.
Because game design is purely about finding that fun and having those mechanics and stuff. Like eye candy and ear candy doesn't help you when it comes to mechanics. There is no compensating for lack of fun by better animated models. Like it just, we all know that in playing a game. We're like, yeah, this game is very fun. Sure, you know, Conan moves pretty and whatever, but it's just not that exciting of a combat thing, right? And so I think what your question is more around about budgeting. You only have a limited amount of time. You only have a limited amount of resources in order to put towards a game. That is a tough call as to how much time and resource do I put into the finding the fun and how much time into polishing and making it look pretty and nice. I just got a game on Steam about 2 weeks ago called I Love Monster. Has anybody played that game? It's like really weird. That's why I bought it. It's like the weirdest game on Steam. That's my kind of pet thing. I love finding the weirdest game on Steam and buying that playing. Okay, so I Love Monster goes back to like Zork, and it is a text adventure game that asks you a series of questions, and you are creating a monster from goo, and you are encounter these moral situations about you see two other monster goos that are fighting over a piece of food. What do? Do you step in and say, hey, and you break it in half and give each side half? Do you eat one of them while the other one's distracted? Do you, ignore it, right? And those are three like moral choices in this game. It's a dialogue with 3 buttons. That's the game, but it takes place in your head. Now, the graphics of that game are what I would call acceptable. They're not crappy, but they're not amazing either. They are sufficient. Could they be better? I guess, but I'm not sure that game even needs that. But it's just, it's an okay game, and it's nice. But the mistake that we had, and maybe other people have, is you think that you can fill in the holes in your game design by pushing in graphics and sound effects. Yeah, those holes are still going to be there. Those potholes, they just keep taking time and energy and whatever. You got to fix the game design. Anybody else have an answer for that question?
Maybe kind of on that, but also the question, in my thinking through it, there's the 4 aspects of the game that really draw me into it, and the question would be, what would you add to this list that you want the gameplay there, the story, the graphics, and then the sound. And probably in that order would be how I'd order them.
In the academic world, they call it mechanics and aesthetics. Is there a third one in that list? Does anybody know? Anybody who's familiar with this research? No? Okay, I'm pretty sure there's just 2. But I have a funny feeling there's a third one. But anyway, it's mechanics and aesthetics. Aesthetics is your sounds and your look and all that stuff. The mechanics is what you actually do and why and how often and that kind of thing. And so game design involves balancing those 2 things. But also building a game involves balancing those 2 things. Game design is much more on mechanics than it is on aesthetics. Yeah, wait.
Clarify from time, you said first 90%, second 90%. Are you talking about?
Sure did.
You're talking about actual, so you get to 90, when you think you're 90% done, you're only actually halfway done as far as time?
Yes.
Or are you talking about blood, sweat, and tears?
It's, it's certainly the emotional aspect of it. But when you have 10% left, you are halfway through your project.
So 10% left from being complete, like a completed piece of software. You
Yes.
still have 90% of your time and budget and stuff to come. 90% of your spend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's that last 10% where it all starts coming together. And that's when you start testing. And that's when you start finding holes that you weren't aware of. And so you're like, hey, I'm almost done, right? Like I have all the levels that I wanted, or I have all the enemies that I wanted and stuff. And that's when you start finding out this enemy's useless. Like, he's exactly the same copy as that other enemy. And it sounded really good in the boardroom, but it's actually not. And so you cut him. And then now you have a hole. Now you're like, what do I fill this with? And then you gotta create a new monster. And it's just like, and that all happens when you think you're 10% done. Or 10% to go, sorry. 10% to go. Any other questions before I move on to the next segment here? Okay. So, programming and tools. Who has questions about programming and tools? As I've described for you, I've gone through 3 sets of tools, 4 actually. So C#, XNA, Unity, Marmalade C++, and Marmalade Quick, which is a Lua Cocos 2D experience. So happy to share any knowledge that I have on those things that you're curious about. Yeah?
Where do I find Marmalade?
The URL is madewithmarmalade.com.
Thank you.
So we still have to fit 3 other guys in, right?
Yep, that's why I'm restarting the timer here. Yeah, G?
So when you're using Unity, are you just using like a scripts in there, or did you go down to adding C++ for engine stuff, or what? Or did you just stay in the level of C#?
C#.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't explored the extensions capability of it. I'm excited that it's there,
Yeah.
but I'm really hoping I don't have to. Because as soon as you start extending an engine, your development time is like, because you got to go and make that extension work and blah, blah, blah. So one of the reasons that I chose Unity, to be honest, is the asset store. Using Marmalade, it really sounds like 2D Miami porn. I don't know the best way to say this, but kind of one of the best Marmalade developers out there, and maybe that's not saying a lot, but what I mean by that is I seem to be encountering things and overcoming things that everybody else seems to be stuck on, maybe because they're more hobbyist or something, you don't have like as long of a history as being a software developer or something like that. And so I've been publishing articles in Marmalade, I've been creating extensions to Marmalade and doing all this stuff. And I'm just like, man, there's not much of a community here. Like, I feel like the only guy, I'm not the only guy, there's another guy that's actually better than me. So, but anyway, I seem to be in that top 1% of Marmalade developers, okay? And so when I'm stuck, there's not a lot of places to go. And because I'm in that top 1%, Marmalade has special support with me, where they will answer my questions, I don't have to pay for it, and that kind of thing and stuff. But sometimes it takes a week to get an answer out of support. Okay, so going from that environment and going over to Unity, where there's lots of websites talking about Unity, there's Lynda videos, there's the Unity documentation is very, very good. There's books you can buy that walk you through Unity. Like, there's just such a wealth of stuff. And then you go to the asset store, and it's like, wow, I want to do Facebook integration. I pay $25 to some guy who's figured it all out for me to talk to the Open Graph API, and for $25 I can have it and I'm done. Like, it took me a week to do that in C++ in Marmalade, and for $25 I can be done in an afternoon. Like, are you kidding me? That's the greatest thing I've ever heard of. So for the independent developer like us, I mean, we're 2 guys. Like, it's very hard to make a title to completion with just 2 guys. So the Unity Asset Store, I'm looking forward to being a solution to many of those problems.
I guess if I needed Facebook integration, I wouldn't immediately think, oh, C++, you're going to help me,
Well, Marmalade is C++ only,
right.
so that was the only choice that I had.
I see. So once you moved to Unity, then all of a sudden you had all these options you didn't have before with Marmalade.
Yes. Yes.
Is Unity really that good? Everybody's been talking about, but I've like used one game online with it and it crashed a bunch for me. Was that just like?
For programming, that's not
For
anything
programming.
to do with.
Okay.
And I think the other area where Unity stands out is its accessibility. There's a lot of people who can get their hands on it, and it's rather simplified for what it does. So simplicity and accessibility, they're just better tools than Unity, but they cost more.
It's a great program for starters, you'd say too.
It depends what kind of starter you are. So I've also used GameMaker in the past, and maybe Wade knows more than me about GameMaker, but I prototyped in GameMaker. And if you don't know much about game development, if you're not a programmer or anything like that, yeah, GameMaker's totally a place to start because you can get a lot done without ever hitting a line of script or something like that. You can drag things in and line things up and use kind of process flow trees and stuff in order to make things happen. So GameMaker is great. Now, if you want something that you can really release with, like GameMaker is, you sacrifice a lot of control, like power, like performance in order to have that ease. Unity, in my estimation, is the perfect balance between ease and power performance. It's very, very good for the new person starting out. It's also very, very good for an industry professional who's making a real game to go out to everybody. You really can release with Unity. So you look at something like Temple Run. I saw Temple Run and I was like, oh, okay, and stuff. Then I found out I made it in Unity, and then I found out how easy it was to make a game in Unity. I'm like, holy crap, like, how long did it take? A month to make Temple Run? Like, it's just like that easy. And yeah, it's a very good tool.
Thank you.
And I looked at Flash, and I looked at, was it Corona? I looked at Corona, Flash, Unity, Marmalade, and then native, like just using Objective-C and stuff. And of everything that I've looked at, Unity is my preferred choice. I think it's the best choice for that. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the choice for you, but
It's worth a try.
it's totally worth it. Next question on tools, programming. G, you want to come up, take questions on programming?
All right. Let's do it. I guess there's like,
Oh.
Put in the sound thing.
all right. Start with a bang. Okay, what am I doing?
Creative and external.
If we'll allow it. And that's why.
Here you go.
Well, that's hilarious. I haven't seen my desktop in like. I forgot what I had back there. I always have like 14 applications open or something.
What anime is that?
That's hilarious. No, it's that's from Dragon Quest V, and it's just some fan art or something. It's kind of neat. Sometimes you get fan art. It's like it's really good art.
Oh yeah.
How to use your like go back to your art appreciation phase, and that class that you didn't want to take and you kind of enjoyed, but you don't want to tell people you liked it. That's how I feel. Okay, this is going to be really short. So I was asked to do 10 minutes to talk about the real skills to be a game programmer. So, gosh, 10 minutes is like, I mean, 10 hours is like, that's not enough time, you kind of need a lot more time than that. Well, 10 minutes, heck, I'm just going to start throwing some things out there. One of the main things is your fundamentals. If you want to be a really good basketball player, what's the secret? Well, you can dribble really well, you got to shoot really well, you got to focus on, the kind of simple things you have to do. And programming is, is the same way. You want to be productive, right? You want to get yourself into the zone where you can code. You want to be good at coding, good at problem solving. So I'm just going to throw out kind of some random things. I could be forgetting some major things. This is just a quick flurry. So you don't start solving a problem or designing some area code by sitting at your keyboard and going, okay, let's go. Okay, in main, all right. You don't do that, right? You're on paper, you're on the whiteboard, and you need to design out your work. And one thing that I found useful is, especially when I'm working with other people, my code is part of this bigger world. Is kind of like forgetting about even the solution to the problem for now, and saying, okay, if this problem is solved exactly like you stated, what you want me to do, right? If I were to give you exactly what you asked for with my code, what would the implications be? How would you use it? That way you kind of make sure you understand the problem. One thing I've seen a whole lot with programmers, and myself included, is you run away working on something, and you kind of forget exactly the problem you're trying to solve, or you didn't have such a clear specification of what you're supposed to do, right? So a designer says, oh, they want something a certain way, and then you have an idea of what that should be, and then you run off and start coding it, right? And and based on what you thought it should be, that could be like a 2-month task, or a 2-day task, or a 2-hour task, right? And the designer might have some completely different thought. When you're working on like bigger teams, you have like other programmers that your code is interfacing with and stuff like that. It's kind of so important to make sure that you guys, that there's a clear expectation of what your code is going to do. And so, the earlier on you can point out a problem, right? Problem during design phase, much cheaper to fix than problem during implementation. Right? And what's going to happen is you're going to end up solving your problem on the whiteboard. You're going to go code it up. You're going to check it in, and there's going to be issues later. And during debugging, that's going to be the most expensive time. And then you have to go back and start over. And a lot of times you have a bunch of code that was written, and a bunch of other people have code that was written, and all of a sudden, like, there was some design flaw, and this is all garbage now. Ouch! This happens every single day when companies out there, all the time. So make sure you understand the problem. Don't just think that, okay, I understand the problem. I'm not even sure if they do. Well, if somebody else kind of is bringing you the work and bringing you the problem, make sure that you get like buy-in on, repeat the problem back. Give them a scenario before you even start thinking of how to solve it. Say, okay, well, so if I provide you something that gives you kind of the results in this format, in this way, how are you going to use it, right? those are kind of good questions to ask. In the end, programmers, at least me and a lot of people I know, like to think in terms of this specification. This is kind of almost legalistic contract. You specify exactly what this is supposed to do. This is exactly what's coming in. And I'm going to assume this, this, and this, and here's exactly what's coming out, right? We like to think in terms of this function, this black box. Like, okay, you give me this, I will give you that. It's exactly what's going to happen. And I'm not going to think behind the scenes and try to solve your other problems for you. People, you can think that way. You can certainly have a contract written that way. But people are going to mess up. And they're not going to realize what they really need. They're not going to, ask you the questions they should be asking. So it's so important to talk about people. Yesterday we were talking about the artist stuff, but on the panel with Alex and stuff, it's like, yeah, that's kind of day in, day out what's happening at studios everywhere. It's like, there was not a clear specification between the artist and the programmer. And, the programmers get frustrated because, oh, why doesn't the artist just make it a certain way? And the artist is in this tight spot because, their job is to make the game look good. right? And so they're using their resources to make it look good, and then the programmers are like, oh, you used a huge texture, and how about a 32 by 32? How about that? How about we pixel depth of 16? Anyway, all right. Oh yeah. So don't surprise others. I put this because one of the most terrible things that can happen is you're working on some section of code, you're trying to solve some problem, and meanwhile somebody else, some other programmer gets inspired, or drinks too much Mountain Dew or whatever, and he just starts writing a bunch of code, right? And he's just solving a problem, like maybe in another area, or like he just didn't want to wait for the next meeting to design something, and so I'll just bust this out now. This could really screw things up. I mean, there are big implications and ramifications of the stuff you implement, right? And all the time, even today, in my normal day, there's guys that are like, oh yeah, that one problem, oh I could bust out that code in an hour. It's like, yeah, sure you could, but how much time are you spending to think about how this code is going to change the whole system, and what is the testing going to be like? How much is it going to cost to retest all the systems that code is being dependent on by, and stuff like that. Yeah, don't surprise people. It comes back to having that clear contract between what I say I'm going to do and what I'm going to deliver. At the same time, other people will surprise you constantly. So be prepared for change. I mean, when I started programming, I went through this phase that I think a lot of programmers do, where it's like you start learning stuff and you're excited about everything, right? I mean, as a kid, like when I learned how to use an if statement, oh man, I was like, I can make any game ever. I got an if statement, baby, And it was like, I'm making these text-based games, and just every single time you're gonna like check an inventory screen, it's just recoded. Like every time, it's like there's not some common function where you like draw the inventory screen. No, it's just like, at every point where you can check it, I'm just hammering stuff out. I mean, it's terrible, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 11 years old. I have no idea. But anyways, what the heck was I going? Yeah. So the things are going to change. I'll go through this period where, I think I know what I'm doing. I'm productive at it because I see lines of code just being busted out, right? So I think I'm being productive and doing a good job. And then eventually you learn like, oh, here's the right way to do it. And I think a lot of programmers get stuck here forever, is that there's a right way. And a lot of times that right way doesn't mean it's right for the project. It means that in code review land, this is the most beautiful way to write your code. If you write your code this way, you're smarter than everybody else. And there's this, even if nobody else thinks it's smart, or understands it, it is. And it's so good. And even though they asked you for something that should have taken, like a day to code, you took 2 weeks and made this really extensible system that's never going to be used in the future, And you just kind of really over-architect, things, because that's the right way to do it. And that could be like the worst thing for your company, right? Being able to get to a point where you went to school, you read the advanced C++ books, you're sitting through the Cgdc lectures, and you're like, I know what he's talking about, I can do that, blah, blah, blah. I can bust out templates in C++, like nobody's business. It's important to kind of mature out of that back to the point where, okay, I have code that other people need to read, other people may need to modify. The code that's easiest to change, in my opinion, is like some of the most professional code there is, right? And I get an applause from Charlie. Yeah, this is the real. I'm serious. Like, programmers have this mindset that that the code has to be right, and I feel this every day. I have to fight it. It's like this urge in the flesh or something. It's like, I want to architect this right way. Oh, this really should be this class with this facade and this surface, and this is design patterns everywhere. And yeah, seriously, like some of the best code for your company is the code where the designer comes in and says, you know what, the RPG was going well, and I'm glad how you did the battle system, but the publisher says this is a racing game now, so the best code is where you come in and you're like, okay, we agreed on this specification. You said it would never, we could always assume such and such was the case. That's all thrown out now. Okay, I can change it, right? Things are not so perfectly architected, so elegantly balanced that if you pull one block out of the bottom, it all falls apart. Some of the best code is just very simple. and it doesn't really impress other programmers so much because they look at it and they're looking for the most complicated constructs of the language, like, ooh, you know, where are you using? Oh, I want to see some functors or something, you know, show me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, somebody else. I have all this template meta programming. Okay, great, but you know, in the end, it only went through like 2 iterations, and there's like a million lines of code that you can understand. All right, let me move on. Oh yeah, one thing important about solving the problem ahead of time is that if you can sort of know how the solution is going to fit, and then work on the solution. You know, the solution might be, hey, there's a middleware product. Hey, there's an App Store $25 thing, and it's just going to get it done, right? Well, I didn't waste my time coding if I designed ahead of time how this is going to integrate. You know, if I had the perfect solution, you know, how would that work with the rest of the game? That work is not lost if your programmer quits tomorrow. Right? And programmers move around quite a bit. Eventually, you will get coding. It's important to see how other people code. Really important. I mean, you learn so many things that way, and I have too. And especially like you went to school, you took a C++ class from one teacher in one part of the country, or you know whatever. You saw one way of doing things. It's important to kind of see lots of ways of doing things. There's things, you know, who learned like macros are evil? Who learned that in class? Somebody. Okay, where the heck did you learn from? Everybody should know macros are so evil. I love macros even all the time. But yeah. There's things you learn in school that are like, these are evil, don't do them. They're not evil, they're dangerous. They're fire, right? Fire is very useful, extremely useful. It can also burn your head off. So it's like when you're playing with fire, you have to be careful. It's very useful, but you know, it can also hurt you. Well, sometimes there's language constructs or paradigms that you just stayed away from because you were told they were bad, and they might be the perfect solution to your problem. Yeah. Oh, all right. Time's up. So read the documentation. If people did this, about 80% of my job might go away. I don't know if that's good or bad. But for the sake of your life and your family and your children, read the documentation. I mean, like 80% of what I do is answer documentation. You know, like something that could have been answered by reading the documentation. And that doesn't mean that the documentation is always easy to read, right? But just familiarize yourself with where things are in the documentation. Make notes if you need to. Give feedback. Anybody who writes documentation needs feedback on it. And if you don't bother them, then their company's never going to get the resources to fix it. So bother me. Know what you're doing, what you want to do. Program into the language. A lot of newbies are like, hey, what programming language do I need to learn? And then that will make me a great programmer. None of them will make you a good programmer. You know, they don't write themselves. If you can speak any language in the world, it won't make you a good speaker. Right? What you have to say kind of matters the most. It's probably very useful to get strong in at least one language, right? A low-level language, I would say, but you know, not very. But anyways, when you come at a problem, right? If I get hired on to do a Unity game or something, and it's in Java, and I've never written a line of Java in my life, right? If I know the problems I'm trying to solve, I know what I'm trying to do, then it's just a matter of like learning enough of the language to do what I want. I want to program into the language. At the same time, when you become strong in different languages, you realize what those languages themselves are kind of made to do. You get more productive in that language if you use that language's way of doing things, right? So that's important. Prepare for change. Leave your ego out the door. I mean, you could have like I could talk for a year about that, but yeah, it's super important. All the time, almost every day, you're a programmer at some point. You know, say, oh yeah, well, those guys are idiots. This happens everywhere. Everybody else is dumb but me. I'm the only one that knows it. Yeah, that's not true. Every other programmer is saying that about you when you're saying that, right? Yeah. So you know, be flexible with other people. If you come on board on a project and everybody's kind of doing things one way, you know, don't be standoffish. I got to do things my way. Just kind of learn to adapt, right? Somebody who's really good at using a tool can use it in the ways that, you know, I don't prefer using it this way, but I know the tool well enough where I can use it this other way. I can be productive and help the team. Everything you write is broken. Every programmer will say this at some point. This should work. If that guy's checking code, this is not at work. This is like in school. If that guy's checking code without compiling it, this should work. Yeah, like that's never going to work. Ever. If you're going to be sitting at that computer for hours and hours and hours, years and years, and you're going to be up in the middle of the night, and you have no sleep, your brain is running at 30% of its capacity. One thing that will really help you is to know your tools like the back of your hand. Know your debugger. Play with it, right? Don't wait until you have bugs to figure out how to use your debugger. Oh man. Learn the shortcut keys. I mean, this is like your tool, man. This is your Sasami knife. This is all you got. When you have a big problem that popped up, you solve this bug, you feel like a big achievement, write it down, describe it. It's going to bite you again in another project or this project. Somebody else can benefit from this, bring it up at a meeting, take advantage of the meeting times, everybody go, oh, we have too much meetings and all that stuff. Well, there's a lot of problems that, when you sit down, you're coding, and I need to go talk to Dave about whatever. Programmers do this all the time. It's like, they know that they have to have at least a 4-hour block to really get in the zone and be productive. They have this high ramp-up time before you get really productive in any coding session. So what happens all the time? They start coding, and then, oh, there's something I needed to talk to somebody about. They get up and go bother that guy. Bam. He was in the middle of his 4-hour, ramp-up. It's done. Meanwhile, they say, oh yeah, meetings are done. During the meetings, I'm going to be coding. Be productive, right? Think about it. Use your profiler. Don't optimize anything until you use your profiler. And your profiler can tell you so many things about how your game is running. It's not just for catching bottlenecks and stuff. Explain your stuff to somebody else. If you're stuck on something, for more than a few minutes, just go talk to somebody. At some studios now, they have like a rubber duck or like a cardboard cutout like Frodo or something, And it's like, just go explain it to that duck. Right? Because what happens is, you're explaining the problem to somebody else, they don't even have to be listening to you. Just you explaining it to them, all of a sudden you realize, oh, I got it, never mind. Forget what I said, sorry for bothering you, right? And so to help them be more productive, you don't have to bother them anymore, you bother the duck. So, this is a real thing, man. Become better. You went through all this work, you solved these problems, you learned a new way of doing things. Every single game you make, usually, is like a new kind of game. It's something that hasn't been done before. If it was, why would you be making a new one? So every time you go through that experience, kind of you learn something, And even if you make the same game over and over, you can learn something better. Comment your code. This is the end of it. I'll skip kind of over most of these. You can read them. You write code, you solve a problem in a certain way, and the important thing to know is that you may think this is so smart. You may think, if a year from now, if somebody has, some idiot has to come back and try to read this code, and he doesn't understand it, that's kind of his problem because I'm a genius. I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit, but this is exactly what kind of goes on in people's heads, right? Like, it's not my problem. If they can't see the beauty of it, I don't have to, comment it and stuff. It's too much work. The problem is, a year later, that idiot will be you. You're going to be the idiot, right? So do it for yourself, if not for anybody else, right? But that's it. Sorry for going over. Thank you.
Last question?
Yeah. Actually, there's more people that got to go.
Yeah. Go ahead and hold questions until we cycle through everybody, and then we'll do questions at the end.
Alex, what? Get up here.
It's gonna be a short shot.
You eating again?
Where's the return?
Give us a flannel graph.
Okay, so Alex is here to answer any questions you have about it. Questions about everything? That's it. There's no presentation, just any questions. I know.
What is the definition of art?
years.
Yeah, how many years have you been at it professionally? Maybe I should say that.
Professional, probably since '99.
Okay. When designing artwork for games, doing all your spriting and everything, tell us about that process. You know, how are you coming up with your characters? You starting off just sketching them on a piece of paper and that kind of thing?
Oh, well, I come from a filming background, right? 'Cause come from animated film. So basically, before you put anything on paper, you need to really create that character, kind of all the attributes. So you need to know, is he obviously a boy or girl? Is he short or fat? Is he really active, or is he like a bookworm? Is he like outgoing or not? Those things really help you when you are kind of imagine what that character will look like. So those are very important. Those are the same exact process that you went through all the TV shows and all the movies. They have to come up with that first, way before you actually start drawing. So that's really the first thing.
More questions for Alex? When you work out those attributes, is it a written process? Is it a drawing process? How many drawings would you come up with on something like that?
Oh, lots. I don't know if you ever watch any like maybe Blu-ray bonus or whatever, like behind the scenes, like how do they, like take Lord of the Rings, right? Like how do they come up with the elfish armor? Well, the artists come up with like, I don't know, 50 or 60 or 100 of them. They just put it all around the board, and the producer will pick like 10, and then you go back and beef up those 10, and then probably pick another 3, then you kind of narrow down from there. So it's kind of that kind of process with us anyways. So I would work out like a lot of different style, different looks, and then we will sit down and like talk about it. Why do you draw like that? Why is that one more catchy than the other one? And we often will bring in other people to see, when you see this picture, what do you think she is or he is? And people will give you that initial feedback, right? And then you will know, oh, right, that doesn't really hit the spot. Oh, that one really did. Right? Sometimes other people's opinion is really helpful. So I would say, do as much as you can, possibly can, and then get other people involved.
When hand in hand, when is doing your craft fun as opposed to being like chore and work?
Right.
And then kind of in line with that, sort of pairing with that, the idea of doing the UI type box graphics versus character and the fun story elements.
Right. Yeah. So, what was your question? Which one is?
What is your experience in I'll make it two questions for you. First, what is your experience in dealing with the non-story elements of something? The UI, the
icons,
the typography or whatever. So that would be one question. And then the other question would be identifying chore versus work in your craft.
Right. So the first one is actually probably my weak point because it's more illustrator, more design work, more like marketing, that kind of thing. Like what kind of font do you use, and what kind of like shadow of the box, and that kind of thing. That I didn't go to school for that. I can look at something and say, ooh, that's really cool. I like that. And look at something like, that doesn't really work. But it's all it's like a feeling, right? But I don't know. I don't really understand why that one is really good in that situation. That one is really bad here. So me personally, I'm learning that too. That is the area that I'm pretty much lack too. So I'm learning on the AI and stuff. Well, the best thing is to always do research, I guess. Like look at all the other games AI. Look at the games that is close to your style of the game that you will create. Look at their AI. Look at their icon because they worked. Right? So maybe you can learn from them or tweak it from their stuff. Second question is it work or chore?
Like, is there a point where your passion for what you're doing becomes more of a chore because
I guess in every field there are certain point that when you reach a certain point you feel like, oh, this is really stressing, this is like too hard or whatever. Yeah, I experience that all the time, especially, we'll just say kind of what G's pointed out, like, yeah, I thought I understand something. I spent a long time like making maybe 20 rough drawings, and then we sit down and it's like, no. And then I feel like, oh, my whole week is like wasted, right? This is frustrating. And then I have to go back and then the first 20 idea is probably the best one because I think they're really good. That's why I made the rough and presented, right? I'm pretty happy with that. And now I have to come up with completely 20 different. I'm like, ah. And that's when I start feeling like, oh, this is not that fun.
Is that normal?
Yes.
Do you feel like that's the normal thing? Like
that
you
is
go with
very
one concept?
normal. I experienced it with even in the TV industry. That's very normal. It's always back and forth. Like the small team is easier. When I was in the real studio, oh man, you gotta go through layers and layers and layers and layers, and then even when you think the design's almost done, yeah, the top guy can just say no, and then everything just go back to zero. It's like, again.
Thus the word back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Yep. Back to the drawing board. Yep.
Oh, okay. That really helps. Sometimes it doesn't seem.
Yeah,
like,
don't feel that's a disencourage or I failed or whatever. It's part of the process.
So making the transition into a runtime rendered, environment, like obviously you have to do things differently, but like, is it mostly just scaling things back, or are you using like new techniques now that, are you having to learn,
You mean 3D stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing I don't know about now. My school actually is partnership with Disney, so we have Disney speakers to our school all the time and tell us how great Disney is, and when you graduate you have to work with us and stuff. So we have a what is that? Pixar. Pixar will go to our school all the time, and all they told us is like, don't worry, don't even waste your time learning 3D programming or 3D animation. We need core people that know the core. If you know how to animate, it's just a tool. Like we can teach you in a month, and you'll be running. So, but that was like back in 97, 98. So I always feel like, oh, okay, I don't have to do that. That's great, because I don't like programming. I don't like, but I guess now is a little bit different, and I started to learn like 3D Studio Max and stuff, and I think it's really fun, really good. I'm still very new with that though, so I don't think I can share too much about that.
Okay, we're doing another topic, so we have to move on to Shem.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about testing and QA. Or take your questions on testing and QA.
So I'm Shem Bingman, and I've taken a couple of years break from my normal QA career, so I'm maybe a little rusty occasionally when it gets me on a question. I can't remember exactly the keyword that I'm thinking of, but I can talk about testing. I would like to also talk about the difference between testing versus QA, because that's where a lot of the real values for project is less about testing and more about QA, but I'll field all of the above. So, hit me with questions.
We need to just start with like an overview of like common things that you see from a QA standpoint, that when you get the product past you at that point that haven't been done. I mean, this is kind of like the real world thing again here.
Sure. So let me first give you an analogy of the difference between testing. Since most people, you know, they get to the end of the process, they build something, we're almost done. We need somebody else to double check it, which is one of my phrases, which I'm going to say again and again and again, is another pair of eyes, another pair of eyes, another pair of eyes. You can't find your own mistakes. You found most of them. Statistics I have says that the average expert programmer working in their field with years and years and years of experience writes 1.2 bugs per line of code. So, yes, they find some of them themselves. Yes, the compiler finds some of them. Yes, most good developers, when they hand it off to QA, have found, identified, and fixed 60 to 80% of the bugs they write, which means, yes, they think their code is awesome because they found all these bugs, they fixed all these bugs. It's so much better. QA should sail through this. I get it, depending on the team, 40-20% of the theoretical bugs that are left. 100,000 lines of code, well, that's still a lot of bugs. Luckily, not all of them come in all shapes and sizes. Some of them are small bugs we don't care about, but there's always going to be bugs found. So, an analogy I will give is programming is to writing what testing is to proofreading. Whereas testing is to proofreading like what an editor would do, or a QA would do to getting an editor for your book. So if you get testing in at the end of your project, yes, his example where, great, I'm 90% done, now I'm ready for the next 90%. Or a gamer example would be, congratulations, you've reached max level in World of Warcraft. Your game has just begun. You are now going to be doing raids, you are now going to be doing politics, you are now going to be grinding and grinding and grinding for equipment upgrades, even though you are officially at max level and theoretically you are done. Your game, in time and effort and angst and everything, has just started. Testing can go exactly the same way. That's one of the reasons why the QA exists ahead of it, to try and prevent that as much as possible. But I have so many different places I can go with that. I'd rather hit specific questions because I've been doing this for 15 years, and I mean, the last time I talked about this was a full jam all my basic intro to testing knowledge into 40 hours as a course. So, yeah.
How many builds will you typically go for? I mean,
Can somebody who can hear better than me?
How many builds do you typically go through in a release? Anything for like,
or
what kind of product?
before you're finally done testing and you're done with the final product, how many phases?
I've taken 13 builds in a single day, which I had a dev that was literally brain dev, which he got so tired and whatever, he's just like, I'm not even compiling my stuff anymore. I'm like, that's fine. I optimized the build system. We can take a build every 5 minutes if you need to and check the specific things. You're just that dead. Stop thinking about that side. We'll handle it. In general, small projects, you're going to probably take a minimum of 5 to 2 QA builds, test builds. It could be hundreds or thousands. I've worked on Windows 2000, for example. You have 1,000 developers, you have lots of builds. Generally that kind of machine you'll have a daily build, and then you'll have like a weekly build, and then you'll have one-off special builds, and it really depends on team size. And I've worked in 1 to 2 people on one end and 1,000 plus on the other.
I feel like people are always talking about getting jobs in testing, but everybody seems to talk about it like it's a simple thing to do, like an entry-level position. But every time I go looking, it feels like it's impossible to find anything. What am I doing wrong?
You're not necessarily doing anything wrong depending when you did that. So if you go back to when I started in the industry, testing jobs were entry level. They were, let's just say $20 plus or minus, switching to today's wages. You get an entry level job, you do some testing, you work under senior people, they throw you a code. You do lots and lots of test cases, you fill out forms, and you do that again and again and again and again until you either go crazy, snowblind, or you finish the project. Whichever comes first. It's kind of like a Call of Cthulhu game. You know, if you do it long enough, you will go insane. Just the way it goes. Die or insane. That's why most people don't stay in the field for a very long time. Now, having said that it's that kind of idea, most of the entry-level jobs, entry-level meaning any job that would normally say that it needs 1 to 3 years experience, that's considered an entry-level testing job. Almost all of those jobs are now in India. There are very, very, very few jobs opening up on this continent right now as just a pure tester. Now, there's many jobs if you're a developer that does some testing, an agile team, you know, a team that allows you to wear multiple hats, those jobs exist. But again, you have to have more technical skill sets to get the other half of the job and then prove you can test. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I would add to that. There's like, you know, they're still like a big QA labs and stuff, but like there's like product testers who are, you know, like getting the what did you call it, entry level, however you say, like really low pay. They, you know, it's like a really low pay job, and they come in and they don't have to kind of have a lot of knowledge about stuff. They just have to kind of, you know, play the game and find bugs. Then there's the testers that are like writing code to test your code. Mm-hmm. These guys are at an entirely another level, and you know, and so there's kind of a big difference between, you know, what kind of testing you're talking about.
So in the field, I think I can describe that. So normally for this kind of audience, the lowest level is play tester.
Right.
They're essentially making minimum wage for contract. They may bill your company at a higher rate through their agency, but they're making minimum wage contract, and they're just using the product and find what they find and, you know, whatever. And then one step up, you have some people that have some idea of software engineering theory. They can maybe write test cases. They've at least read a test plan. They're probably making 50% more. And then you've got the next group that is medium level QA people. They can potentially write a test plan. They've done tons of previous experiences through full life cycle of shipping products. They can write test scripts, etc., at least for everything manually. The next level up, you either have the intro level QA leads and or some of the software automation, writing code to test your code. And then at the far end, you have like senior QA analysts that are focusing on the very high-end process software, and they can do all of the above, including automation. So I've been in all of those roles. So the prices vary dramatically. Yeah, I won't say numbers.
Yeah, I was just going to second what you said on the thing earlier too. Our company, for instance, which is, got lots of employees, we recently downsized pretty much all of our QA over to India. We have a few QA, it's just the senior people that we kept behind. Everything else is pretty much.
I literally got pulled into an office one time and they said, here's the QA org chart. We've been mandated to move $1 million worth of jobs to India this year. And they drew a line across the org chart and said, every single person below this line will be gone or very high risk of being gone by the end of the year. Now, my job as a senior QA analyst was above that line. They're like, you're fine, don't worry about it. But, you know, pretty much the bottom 2/3 of a QA org chart right now is overseas. They're not doing a particularly good job. They need a lot of babysitting. It's making people like me do a lot more work to coordinate. And one of the big deals about QA is communication expectation management. That is one of the biggest. Everyone thinks testing is about code. No, the real product is in your head first. And having multiple people that sit in the same time zone, in the same meeting, agree is often more difficult than you think. So when you add multiple cultures, multiple time zones, you know, half a world apart, especially in a culture like India where it's very linear, you have a specific job you were supposed to do and you get punished by overreaching above or to the side, and so you can only do your little piece, and there's someone else who has a special piece for the next piece, and someone else for the next piece, and then one person that oversees those three, and they are very black and white. Don't go outside, don't do any thinking. Whereas in America, we typically are, hey, let's make it work. I'll do someone else's job for a day. So it's a lot of the real world examples, I think, India will not continue to steal testing jobs forever, because they will either learn to think our way and it will improve, or more likely some of those jobs will come back because of it just takes too much time and effort. The wages there are increasing, and it takes a lot of babysitting. Very, very expensive people to babysit cheap people. It averages out. So, process, products, timeline. Yeah.
With the thought to like, if you're just getting started, get a game out there, what degree of testing should a first game out go through? Can it just go to the public and see the feedback, like criticism, and call that a testing process?
That's officially a lot of the games that do the whole soft launch or release to beta. That's essentially what they're doing. And even there, it's like people don't realize it takes when you have, let's just say your game downloaded really well, and you have 20,000 people that are playing, that's potentially 20,000 people that are writing the same bug that they found the same day. And it's coming in, so yay, congratulations, you're getting free work. But you have a whole bunch of bugs coming in. Most of the time when I've seen beta tests, and when I've done management for beta testing, let's say 100 reports come in. In reality, that's 6 bugs. And somebody needs to sort them out and say, these are essentially all the same. 2 of them were totally gibberish. We do not know what they were talking about at all. This was, a whole bunch of people found this issue, a whole bunch of people found this issue. These issues are relevant, and we need a little bit better write-up on it, so we send them off to our internal test people to go replicate these bugs, because they're probably close and it's probably important. And then we're not sure what to do with these. So even when you release and say, hey, I don't need testing, I'm going to do my testing public, it's going to be free, etc., it's not really free. It's going to gobble either a programmer's time or someone dedicated just to manage that process.
Sorry, I'll have to last question because we can break for lunch.
This is addressed to every speaker that's been up here.
Okay.
This is from a complete newbie. I've heard this term, and I am a newbie. I would like to have a brief statement of your tools, where it starts from pencil and paper to your software side. What do you consider the most important tools of your real skill application and what you do?
Okay. In order of importance, okay, actually let's just sort. Your brain is testing and QA tool number 1. Your tongue is number 2. It's all about communication. The models you have in your head and how you communicate with other people are most important. I personally am a person that draws lots of pictures. I'll write it one way, I'll draw pictures of it. I'm constantly forcing myself to represent it in different models, even how I write it down, which helps me explain it to other people better. Once I go beyond that, most common tools are Word and Excel. I build a couple of basic templates. I could actually give out some templates that I have that I've developed on my own time that aren't tied to any particular company, so nobody can come after you. There's some basic Excel templates or Word templates that just make it easier to do your test plans, to do your test cases, etc., etc. There are more specialized tools out there. They tend to be expensive. They tend to be very, very poorly implemented. I routinely have to call up the shops and report bugs against the testing tools that are blocking me from using the testing tools to find bugs in the product I'm supposed to actually be working. So in general, start small, start organically. Often you can find a freeware tool that's developed out there that's released that you can modify for your own environment for the places you need, because I do recommend goals of 80% automation, and what tools you use for that change based on platform language, etc. But just plan, go to manual testing, start automating. Never automate everything. You can't. It's foolish. An automated test is essentially one big blind spot. If you don't have humans cross-checking what your computer is doing automatically, it's like, oh yeah, we ran all the tests and they all passed. Well, sorry, your tests were often written by the same developers who wrote the code. Shared blind spots. Sorry, the test passed, the code failed. That's actually one of the things to think of testing as, instead of being antagonistic, think of it as being an assistant or an ally. You're there to help the project manager. You're helping, to keep the project on schedule. You're here to help the manager keep the project in budget. You're here to help the programmer reduce as much of that second 90% as possible. Don't go into a, us versus them mentality. Outgrow that as soon as possible. Pretty much every tester goes through it. Stop.
Thank you. So,
And I'll field other questions later.
yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Like, we're here to answer these questions at lunch and hallway and whether just anything. That's why I flew here. That's why Alex flew here, was to help you guys and hopefully have you help us. So that's why we're around and ask other questions you want. So thank you very much for all the participants, Shem and G and Alex. Now we can run lunch.